Ptolemy's geography. Claudius Ptolemy's geography from the 2nd century CE is an undeniably important ancient source for understanding the geography of the Celtic and Brythonic tribes. Ptolemy, a Greco-Roman mathematician and geographer, was living and working in Alexandria, Egypt, yet somehow managed to chart out Britain, a place he likely never even saw. Talk about a long-distance cartographer. Using reports from travellers, traders, and maybe a bit of educated guesswork, he created one of the earliest detailed maps of the known world. Unfortunately, Ptolemy wasn't much for storytelling. His geography is more about listing place names and coordinates than diving into juicy cultural details. Think of it as the Google Maps of its day, but without the street view or reviews. Still, his work is invaluable for understanding the layout of Celtic Britain. Here are some of his most notable mentions: the tribal names and locations in Britain.
In the southern part of the island, Britain, dwell the Belgae, 𝐾𝐭, Regni, and Atrebates. To the west are the Dumnonii and Cornovii. In the central and northern parts are the Dobuni, Iceni, Brigantes, and Votadini.
Claudius gives us an early attempt at mapping the political landscape of Britain, giving us some insight into the regional identities of the Brythonic Celts, the location of prominent settlements. Ptolemy identifies and names settlements, some of which correspond to modern-day cities. For example,
𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐵, the city of the Brigantes, lies in the interior, as does Lindum of the Corytani.
These settlements later became Roman centres, modern York and Lincoln, but Claudius places them in the context of their Celtic origins. The island's geography. Here Ptolemy describes the geography of Britain itself.
Britannia is triangular in form, its southern side facing Gaul and its northern apex reaching toward Hibernia.
He goes on to outline rivers, promontories and islands, naming features that were important to the Celts, such as the River Thames. I think I've mentioned Taliesin in about 80% of my recent videos, and for good reason. He's one of the rare sources that gives us insight into the afterlife beliefs of the Brythonic Celts, and he has an incredible way of expressing these ideas. Before I began studying Celtic history, I used to write music for TV and media, and one lesson that has stayed with me is the power of simplicity. Saying what you need to in as few notes as possible. Beethoven mastered this. A single phrase could carry the weight of an entire symphony, building layer upon layer of emotion and meaning. That's how I see Taliesin's poems. His words are direct, beautiful, and perfectly capture what he wants to say with no wasted space. His poetry has a remarkable economy of language. It's concise, evocative, and layered with meaning. Like a great composer, he crafts verses that seem simple on the surface but resonate deeply, enticing readers to uncover the nuances beneath. The Otherworld, Annwn, the Celtic Otherworld, is mentioned frequently in Welsh lore and poetry, including Praethau Annwn, the spoils of Annwn, attributed to Taliesin.
And I went to the Otherworld, to 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭, where the cauldron of inspiration is guarded by 9 maidens. No lie was spoken there, and no heart returned unbroken. It was kindled by the breath of 9 maidens. It is the cauldron of the chief of Annwn. What is its fashion? A rim of pearls encircles it. It does not boil a coward's food. It was blessed by the breath of 9 maidens. Is it not the wonder of the world? My poetry, from the cauldron it is inspired. By the hand of 𝐼𝐿𝐵𝐿 it was lifted, and in the grasp of the lightning bolt it was stolen.
The Welsh Triads. Now, we step into the mystical realm of the Celts, a world that has always captivated me. In contrast to the cold analytical accounts of the Romans, the Welsh Triads draw us into the heroic and mythological heart of the Brythonic Celts. These medieval Welsh texts preserve fragments of much older oral traditions, giving us an insight into a culture filled with legendary figures, epic battles, and themes of loyalty, betrayal, and the supernatural. While they may not be entirely factual, they capture the spirit and imagination of the Celtic people. And as the saying goes, there's no smoke without fire. Perhaps like the Bible, these stories are rich with metaphors and hidden meanings, and maybe even deeper truths behind the legends. The three unrestrained ravagings of the island of Britain. This triad recounts moments of betrayal and destruction in Brythonic legend.
The three unrestrained ravagings of the island of Britain. The first was when 𝐬𝐿 ravaged the land for the sake of Branwen, daughter of 𝐿r. The second was when the swineherds of King Pryderi released the sacred pigs of Arnún. And the third was the ravaging of the Saxons, who came under the guise of friendship but destroyed everything in their path.
This paragraph explains themes of betrayal and the thin line between trust and devastation in Celtic lore. The Welsh Triads are based on groups of three because the number 3 held symbolic significance in Celtic culture, representing balance, harmony, and completeness. It was a mnemonic device in oral traditions, making the stories easier to remember and pass down through generations. The 3 faithful war bands of the island of Britain. This celebrates the loyalty and heroism of warriors.
The 3 faithful war bands of the island of Britain. The war band of Cadwallon ap Cadvan, who never retreated from battle. The war band of Geraint son of Erbin, who stood firm even unto death. And the war band of Arthur, who never refused a summons to battle, no matter the danger.
The Welsh Triads is a doorway into the soul of the Brythonic Celts, preserving fragments of their history, mythology, and culture, giving us insight into the values, beliefs, and narratives of early medieval Wales. The texts were compiled between the 13th and 14th centuries, but from much older oral traditions that may date back as far as the 6th century. The Triads can be seen as a crossover between myth and history, recounting legendary figures like Arthur and Pryderi, alongside historical themes like the Saxon invasions. They encapsulate the Brythonic Celts' cultural values, such as loyalty, honour, generosity, and the consequences of betrayal, all organised into groups of 3. The Triads are vital for understanding the heroic and mythological traditions of the Brythonic Celts and their influence on later Welsh literature, including the Mabinogion and Arthurian legends. Nennius's Historia Brittonum. Nennius, traditionally credited as the author of the Historia Brittonum, was a 9th century Welsh monk believed to have lived in the kingdom of Gwynedd, modern-day northwest Wales. He was likely connected to a monastic community. His work, compiled around 829–830 CE, is a mix of history, mythology, and genealogy, written during a time when the Brythonic Celts in Wales were striving to preserve their identity against Saxon dominance. In the preface to some versions of the text, Nennius writes,
I, Nennius, a disciple of 𝐿𝐵𝐿, have made a heap of all that I have found.
Nennius clearly suggested that he saw himself as a compiler rather than an original author, drawing on a range of oral and written sources. The Historia Brittonum includes the earliest mentions of King Arthur, genealogies linking the Britons to the heroic figure Brutus of Troy, and the mystical wonders of Britain, blending myth and history to strengthen the cultural identity of the Brythonic Celts. While modern scholars debate its accuracy and authorship, Nennius' work remains an invaluable record of early medieval Welsh heritage and a cornerstone for understanding the cultural memory of the Celts. On the origin of the Britons, Nennius gives an account of the mythical origins of the Britons, tracing their lineage to Brutus, a descendant of Aeneas of Troy.
The island of Britain derives its name from Brutus, a Roman consul. Brutus was the son of Silvius, the son of Ascanius, the son of Aeneas, who came from the city of Troy. After the fall of Troy, Aeneas travelled to Italy, where his descendants ruled. Brutus, having accidentally killed his father, was exiled and travelled across the seas. He eventually arrived in Britain, where he conquered the land, giving his name to the island and establishing the people who came to be known as the Britons.
This foundational myth ties the Britons to the legendary Trojan War and gives them a heroic ancestry. The 12 Battles of Arthur. Nennius famously lists 12 battles fought by King Arthur, showing his role as a warrior leader defending the Britons against their enemies.
Then Arthur fought against them in those days with the kings of the Britons, but he was their leader in battle. The first battle was at the mouth of the river Glyne. The second, third, fourth, and fifth were on another river, called 𝐷𝐵𝐺lass, which is in the region of Nennius. The 6th battle was on the river Barsas. The 7th battle was in the wood of 𝐾𝐨𝐵𝐿, which the Britons call 𝐶𝐾𝐨𝐬𝐿. The 8th was near 𝐦𝐨𝐵𝐿 fort, where Arthur bore the image of the Virgin Mary on his shield, and through her power put the Saxons to flight. The 9th was at the city of the Legion. The 10th was on the shore of the river 𝐦𝐨𝐵𝐿 fort. The 11th was on the hill called Agnead. The 12th was the greatest and most famous, the Battle of Badon, where 960 men fell in one day at a single charge of Arthur, and none laid them low but himself alone.
This passage is one of the earliest mentions of Arthur in historical tradition and portrays him as a powerful central figure in Brythonic resistance to the Saxons. Diodorus Siculus' Bibliotheca Historica. Diodorus Siculus was a Greek historian from 𝐼𝐺𝐸 in Sicily who lived during the 1st century BCE, around 90 to 30 BCE. He is best known for this massive work, the Bibliotheca Historica, Library of History, a universal history spanning mythological origins to his own time. This epically ambitious 40-book project aimed to chronicle the known world's history and culture, though sadly, only books 1 to 5 and 11 to 20 survive, with fragments of the rest preserved through later writers. Diodorus Siculus' Bibliotheca Historica provides some of the most vivid and detailed descriptions of the Celts from a classical perspective. His account, largely based on earlier sources like Posidonius, captures their appearance, customs and way of life, on their love of debate and eloquence.
The Celts are eloquent speakers and skilled in debate. They use their words as effectively as their weapons, and their leaders are often chosen for their ability to inspire and persuade. Even in assemblies, disputes are frequent, as every man considers his opinion as valuable as the next. Their passion for argument is matched only by their respect for those who can best express themselves.
Us Brits certainly have that DNA in us today, on their love of war and heroism.
The whole nation is war-mad, and both highborn and low delight in warfare. When they enter battle, they shout and clash their weapons against their shields, creating a terrifying noise to intimidate their enemies. They value personal bravery above all, and consider it the greatest shame to survive a defeat in battle. Many wear torques around their necks, a sign of their rank and courage, and some fight without armor, believing it brings greater glory to face death unprotected.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed diving into the fascinating world of the Celts.